I met Claire at the library on a Tuesday. She was reaching for a book on the top shelf, and I heard her perfume before I saw her face, something like rain on old stone. Our fingers almost touched on the spine of a Gothic novel. She laughed, a small, careful sound. I was drawn to her immediately, though I couldn't say why. There was something careful about her, like she was always listening for something just beyond hearing. We started meeting there on Tuesdays. My wife didn't ask questions. She was busy with her charity work, her book clubs, the performance of contentment. With Claire, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in 15 years. But there were obstacles. She had a boyfriend, a man named Derek, who called her constantly, who seemed jealous of her time. And there was something else, something I noticed in the third week of knowing her. She always wore a long scarf, even in summer. Once, I asked her to remove it. She hesitated for a long moment, then pulled it away. There was a mark on her neck, dark, irregular, like a bruise that never quite healed. When I asked, she touched it absently. "I don't remember how I got it," she said. "It's been there for months." The mark was shaped almost like a handprint, but impossibly large. I didn't press her. Some things you don't ask about. But I kept meeting her. We began to leave notes in library books, small confessions, small hopes. She told me she'd left Derek. I told her I'd file for divorce. An autumn evening, she took my hand and pressed it to her chest. "If we do this," she whispered, "if we really do this, we can't go back." I felt her heart racing. "I know," I said. We made a promise there, in the stacks, surrounded by other people's stories. It felt like the moment everything broke open and reformed. For 2 weeks, we were stupidly happy. We took a room at a small hotel by the river. I remember the exact quality of that morning light, honey-colored, cutting through thin curtains. She made terrible coffee using the hotel kettle. We laughed. She lay with her head on my chest, and I thought, this is what people kill for. This is what ruins lives. I was 37 years old, and I had never felt so alive. Then I got a call from the hospital. Claire had been hit by a bus. She'd been crossing at an intersection downtown, somewhere she told me she'd never been. The driver said she seemed to step into traffic deliberately, but he couldn't be sure. She was in intensive care. They didn't expect her to wake. I stood in that fluorescent corridor, and the world became smaller and sharper. I saw only her bruised face, the tubes, the machines that made sounds like breathing. Her mother arrived and didn't ask who I was. She already seemed to know. After 3 days, Claire's eyes opened. She recognized me. She tried to speak, but her jaw was wired shut. She could only look at me with an expression I couldn't read. She died 4 days later. I moved back into my house. My wife called it a breakdown. I called it grief. Then something darker than grief. The nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed and hear them, footsteps in the hallway. Not hurried, steady, almost like pacing. I'd rush to the door, but the hallway was always empty. The footsteps would move to another part of the house, down the stairs, along the kitchen tile, into the basement. I followed them once, at midnight, down the wooden steps, into the cool dark. I could hear them ahead of me, slow and deliberate. They stopped at the corner where the old furnace stood. When I turned on the light, there was nothing, but the air was cold there, colder than it should have been. and I smelled it, that same scent. Rain on old stone. "Claire?" I whispered. The footsteps started again. They moved toward me, closer now. I could hear the soft scrape of something. Cloth, maybe? Or skin? Brushing against the concrete wall. But when I reached out, my hands found only air. I heard the stairs creak as the footsteps climbed. I followed, but I couldn't catch them. They moved through my wife's bedroom, then mine. They circled my bed while I lay in it, unable to move, every night for a month. My wife checked herself into her sister's place. The footsteps didn't stop. I found a detail in the hospital report I'd missed before. The bus had hit Claire at 2:47 p.m. on Tuesday, the same day and time we'd first met at the library, the same Tuesday she'd always saved for me. Derek had been there, witnesses said. He'd been arguing with her on the corner just before she stepped into traffic. But when police went to bring him in for questioning, they found him in his apartment. He'd been dead for 2 days. For days before Claire ever crossed that street. His neck bore the same mark, the same impossible handprint. The footsteps still come. I hear them in the hallway. When I'm alone, sometimes I follow them to the basement, down to that cold corner, and I stand there waiting. Sometimes I almost feel her hand in mine, cold, gentle, insistent. My wife's lawyer says I'm not well. The house is for sale now. I've signed everything. Some nights I stand at the top of the basement stairs and listen to the sound of her footsteps below. And I wonder if I should go down to meet her, or if she's coming up to get me. I still don't know which answer frightens me more. I met Iris at a museum opening in March. She was standing in front of a painting of a burning house. Strange choice for a gallery show. The canvas was all oranges and blacks, the architecture collapsing inward. She wore a navy dress and held a glass of wine she didn't drink. When I moved beside her, she didn't startle. "Beautiful and awful," she said. That was all. But I heard something in her voice like recognition, like she was speaking to someone who'd also been burned. We exchanged numbers that night. She worked as a conservator, restoring old paintings. I was an architect, redesigning office complexes, practical, forgettable work. But Iris talked about her restorations the way other people talked about love. She'd describe how she'd uncover a layer of paint from a century ago, hidden beneath years of someone else's vision. "It's like archaeology," she said, "finding what was always there." The obstacles came quickly. Her ex-husband still called her regularly, claiming he needed to see their daughter. Iris would take these calls in the other room, and I'd hear her voice go tight, formal. She never raised it, but something in her tone suggested an old wound that wouldn't close. And there was something about her apartment that unsettled me. On the bathroom shelf, she kept a collection of old mirrors, cracked, discolored, their silver backing peeling away. When I asked about them, she said, "I like broken things. They're more honest." One evening, I noticed small burn marks on her wrists. Not fresh, white and faded like old scars. When I touched one gently, she pulled her sleeve down. "I was careless with a solvent at work," she said. But the marks were too precise, too deliberate, and they formed a pattern, almost like letters. She changed the subject, asking about my day. But I'd seen something in her eyes, a shadow, a secret kept. We made love for the first time in her apartment. Afterward, she held me tightly, and I felt her trembling. "If you stay," really stay, then you're part of this now, part of me, and I don't know if that's safe." I told her I didn't care. I meant it. That night she slept curled against me, and in the streetlight coming through the window, I could see the marks on her wrists more clearly. They spelled out initials, not hers. 6 months later, we rented a cottage by the river. We decided to leave the city to start over where no one knew us. The cottage was from the 1920s with a stone chimney and wooden beams. We spent one perfect Saturday painting the bedroom pale yellow. She hummed while she worked. I'd never heard her hum before. It was the sound of someone at peace. We made dinner together. She laughed, a real laugh, not the careful one I was used to. That evening, sitting on the porch with coffee going cold, I thought, this is where the story ends well. The next morning, I woke to find her standing at the window. The sky was dark and heavy with smoke. A wildfire had started upstream. The county was issuing evacuation warnings. By evening, the fire was close enough that we could see the glow on the horizon. The news said homes were burning, whole neighborhoods gone. Iris refused to leave. She stood on the porch, watching the flames spread through the forest like a sickness. "We have to go," I said. She didn't respond. That was my daughter's initials on my wrists. Her name was Emma. She was 8 years old. I went very still. There was a fire in my house 17 years ago. My ex-husband and I were fighting in the kitchen. I went upstairs to pack, to leave him. Emma was in her bedroom. When I came back down, he'd lit a candle. He said if I tried to take Emma, he'd burn it all. He was angry. He didn't mean... She trailed off. He went upstairs to get her, to show me he was serious, but he'd been drinking. He fell asleep. Emma must have knocked the candle over. The fire grew closer through the night. We watched it from the cottage steps as the flames climbed the hillside. Iris's face was lit orange and black, exactly like the painting in the museum. She looked peaceful, almost expectant. He lived. My ex-husband lived. He served a few years. Emma didn't. She turned to me. I've been waiting for another fire ever since. I know that's not sane, but I thought if I could be in one, truly be in one, I could understand what she experienced. Or maybe I could finally stop hearing her crying. I begged her to come with me. The evacuation order had become mandatory. The fire was less than a mile away. She stood up and walked toward the cottage door. "You go. You have to." I didn't want to leave her, but I was afraid of what would happen if I stayed. So I drove toward the main road, watching in my mirror as the cottage got smaller, then disappeared into the glow. I got out safely, made it to an evacuation center. They said the fire had jumped the river that night, but it had spared the cottage. When I drove back 2 days later, the house was still standing. Iris was gone. They never found her. The sheriff assumed she'd evacuated separately and left the area. I never told them what she'd said. What would be the point? I don't know if she walked into the fire, if she simply left, if she got what she was looking for. Sometimes I drive past that cottage. The new owners fixed it up, painted it cream and green. Normal colors. I think about Iris standing there watching the flames come closer, and I wonder if she finally heard Emma's voice stop crying. I think sometimes she's been waiting for me to walk into a fire too.
I met Marcus at a farmer's market on a Saturday in April. He was selling heirloom tomato seedlings from his nursery, and his hands were stained dark green from the soil. When he handed me a seedling, his fingers brushed mine, and he smiled like he'd known me for years. "This one's a fighter," he said about the plant. "It'll grow anywhere, even in poor soil." I bought 3. I told myself it was for the garden, but I kept going back to his stall every week. His ex-wife was a constant presence, not physically, but in the space between us. She still owned half the nursery. She still called him about property disputes and custody arrangements for their teenage son. He'd take these calls while I waited, watching his jaw tighten. He never spoke badly of her. That was part of what drew me to him. He had a gentleness that seemed almost fragile. One evening at his house, I found an old photograph in his desk drawer. Marcus and his wife, years younger, standing in front of this same house. But there was something else in the photo, a third person, a woman I didn't recognize, cropped out at the edge so only her shoulder and part of her face remained. When I asked about it, Marcus took the photo and stared at it for a long time. "That was someone we knew," he said quietly. "A long time ago. She's not around anymore." He put the photo away and wouldn't say more, but I noticed he looked at me differently after that, more carefully, like he was trying to see something in my face. He started talking about the future, about building something real. One night, he gave me a key to his house. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not just visit, stay." We made a pact in his kitchen. He said, "Whatever comes, we face it together." I felt like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I was. Later, I'd understand how much. We spent that whole summer in the garden. He taught me about soil composition, about pH levels and drainage. He was meticulous, almost obsessive about the earth. We planted vegetables and flowers. He'd stand at the back fence, looking at the corner of the yard where the roses grew wild and tangled, and he'd say we should clear it out, start fresh. But he never did. Every time we got close to clearing it, he'd change his mind. One July afternoon, we made love on the back porch after a rain. The smell of wet earth was everywhere. His skin was cool and damp. He held me afterward like I was something precious he might lose. "I've never told anyone this, but I think I've been waiting for you my whole life." I believed him then. I think I still do. In August, his son was hit by a car while riding his bike. The boy survived, but barely. Marcus spent nights at the hospital. His ex-wife was there too. I watched them together in the waiting room, their shared history, their shared blood in that room upstairs. I realized then how little I actually was, how temporary. When his son woke up, the first thing he asked was about a girl. Not his mother, not his father. He kept asking if she was okay. Who was she? Where was she? Marcus was confused. He'd been with his son when the accident happened. They'd been riding together. The boy had hit his head hard. Trauma, the doctors said. Memory scrambling. But the boy became increasingly frantic. She was right there. She was right there on the road. No one else had seen anyone. The street was empty. Marcus started drinking more. He became distant. One night, I found him in the garden at midnight, digging. Just digging mindlessly at that corner where the wild roses grew. I asked him what he was doing. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, fear mixed with something else. "Don't ask me about this place. Don't ever ask me what's under here." I should have left then, but I didn't. 2 weeks later, I did the only thing I could think to do. I dug there myself while he was at the hospital. I dug deep until my fingers hit something wrapped in canvas and plastic. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew. Somehow, I'd always known from that cropped photograph, from the way he never cleared that corner, from the boy's insistent voice asking about a girl who wasn't there. I covered it back up. I packed a bag. But when I tried to leave, I found my car keys missing. He was standing in the kitchen, holding them. "You found it," he said. Not a question. "Who was she?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "Someone who loved me, the way you do. Someone who asked too many questions. Someone who wouldn't let me bury the past where it belonged." I understand now why his hands were always so familiar with the soil, why he knew so much about what would grow in poor earth, why he wanted me to stay, why he gave me that key. I'm still in this house. The garden is beautiful. The roses still grow wild and tangled in that back corner. I don't go there anymore. Marcus is kind to me, most days. He talks about getting married, about building something real. Every evening, he goes out to tend the garden, his hands staining dark green with soil. Sometimes his son calls from the hospital. He's recovering well, but he still has moments where he seems confused, calling out for someone nobody remembers. I think about that girl who asked too many questions. I think about what grows in earth like this. Last week, Marcus asked if I wanted to help him plant something new in the back corner. I said no, but I wonder how long I can keep saying that.